to be 100% committed to something than 98% committed. And I'm really trying to internalize that fully, because we often do things like, oh, I'm going to get fit in 60 days. I'm going to lose weight for 90 days. I'm going to stop eating sugars for a year. That's a half-assed commitment. That's you not saying, I am a new person. That's you saying, all right, well, this is a temporary thing I'm doing. So when it comes to relationships, when it comes to habits, when it comes to whatever it is, we don't fully commit. We'll even tell ourselves, okay, well, I'll have a cheat day. I'll do this. It's like, oh, I'll be vegetarian for a few years and then I'll switch back to whatever. So for me, commitment is goes beyond a promise. Commitment is a change, a permanent change in yourself. So those are my thoughts on commitment. What do you think?
Very interesting. I think this is going to make for a good one because I have a contrary take just from what I've seen about commitment. So I think half-assing and kind of telling yourself you're committed to something is the first step. To your point, you have to believe that with conviction and say, I'm in this now. This is my new world. As all our listeners love to learn about, I'm a DJ. And as I got into music more and more, I don't think there was 100% commitment. There was a decision made that, hey, I want to go test these waters and I'm going to pursue this with passion and conviction. However, there was definitely 3% of my brain at all times that was like, do I really want to do this? Am I really going to do this? All of that. However, as the activity started piling up, that 97% turned to 98. That 98 turned to 99. And now I'm closer and closer to 100% commitment. Few other examples in life, I would say, with writing, with some of the other areas. Like I still remember when I was around 20, after I got kicked out of school, I was kind of rebuilding myself and would read literally 1 page a day. Like I had terrible anxiety. I was like smoking cigarettes every day. Like would barely even come out to hang out with my roommates. It took me multiple tries to spend 10 minutes in the gym. So at this point in my life, I was just like, if I could just read 1 page a day, that like would be a huge win. So to your point, maybe that was like a micro commitment. Like I'm 100% dedicated to reading this 1 page a day, even if that's the only thing. And it's just crazy to me how that exploded. Like this was right around the time that Medium, the kind of publishing platform, had become more mainstream. There's a lot of writers and they're making money. And I was like, that's going to be me. So I committed to that for half a year. And eventually I stopped. Why? Because of a lack of commitment. Now I was at this inflection point where I think I could have pursued it and doubled down and I would have, been able to make a killing. Like I was making, $10 residually a month, not horrible. It's not like it actually takes a lot of work to even get to that. And I probably could have just stepped it up a few notches and, been in the big leagues. And big leagues isn't like you're retired, but big leagues as in, once again, it's residual money for people reading your content. So it's pretty great. And you can build so much from there. But all is to say that like, to me, a lot of things are micro commitments. You like tell your brain you're going to do this for kind of, to go to your example, once a day, once a week, for 30 days straight. But as you do that, the snowball kind of goes downhill instead of you pushing uphill this whole time. You get a little bit of a kind of flat surface or like even downhill, and it just keeps speedballing from there.
Do you feel that the things that you have accomplished today, that there was ever a point where you kind of 100% committed, where, for example, with entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, when you ask them, has ever been a point where you felt like there was no going back? And usually that comes from when you spend money, when you make a financial investment that is big towards your venture, towards your dream. One of the examples I've heard is a 17-year-old shoe entrepreneur spends $10,000 of his hard-earned money to buy a truckload worth of shoes. And then when they see that giant pile of shoes in their garage, something clicks in their brain and they say, okay, well, now I am this person. I am the shoe entrepreneur. I am someone who does this. Or another example is the man who is overweight who goes to the suit shop and gets tailor-made suits for somebody that doesn't even look like him. And he has to spend so much money, he has to put a down payment on the suits, but they don't fit him. And that changes something in your brain where you say, okay, I'm no longer fat. I'm not a fat person. I am an entrepreneur. I am this. I am a DJ. And so for you, I'm sure when you bought your first kit, I don't know if that's the right word, that was a financial investment. And that financial investment made it so that you tell yourself, well, I am a DJ.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And I guess maybe I'm creating my own little definition, which is commitment is like an antithesis. Commitment is the opposite of doubt, but that's not really true, right? Like commitment means that you've told your brain that you're going to take the approach and identify as this new person you want to become. There's going to be doubts along the way, but that doesn't mean, in fact, those doubts are actually tests of your commitment versus being, completely opposite. Those doubts come along the way and they only reinforce your commitment. Another example I'll give, this podcast and creating content in general. A few years ago, I've been writing for a long time, but I always looked at other people and said, wow, they're like creating content. I really want to do this. I want to share my thoughts with people. I want to see what they have to say. Some of it could be valuable to younger versions of myself. So I made that commitment. And on LinkedIn, I've been posting for at least 2.5 years. Then I stopped for around 6 months to 9 months because I was riddled with doubt and imposter syndrome. I'm following all these, famous people. They're doing very well. What about me? Why am I posting here if I'm not creating anything that great? But the commitment, I think, brought me back where, like you said, I said, this is my identity. I am someone who shares my knowledge and enjoys learning from other people. It doesn't mean I have to be anyone else that's doing it, and how they're doing it doesn't matter either. It's just that I've committed to learning the skill. And to your point, if it takes me 40 years, that's okay. Like, I think that's, this is in Naval Ravikant's book. The name is somehow The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And he talks about how many times we play small games, like you said, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But what you want to do is play long-term games with long-term friends. And that means expanding your time horizon and thinking, wow, well, if I start now, this is something I want to do. Maybe I'm not good today. Maybe I won't be good tomorrow. Maybe I won't be good in a year. But if I'm good, if I just keep working at this in 5 years, I'll be great. One of the important things that I struggle with in this realm is that there's so many things that I've told myself I want to be great at. Now, I usually get in my head and say, it's frustrating to me when I don't see those results. But strangely enough, I think when I put some of this stuff into the world, I say, I want to be a DJ, I want to create content, all of those other kind of pursuits, I don't feel commitment right away. But as I mentioned, like just putting it out in the universe, there's very contrarian advice to this, but at least for me, that has worked where I just say that I'm going to do it. And then eventually it happens. Once again, like I want to design, create apps. I want to do product management. Those, I haven't even done many of the steps that it'll take to get there. But often you are taking those steps and you don't even know it. Like in a product related role, I work in product marketing. That is very close to product management. I never give myself the credit for that. but my brain is slowly churning and going, okay, like there are some steps to take that I can take to get here. And it's not going to be linear. It's not going to make sense. There's a lot of things happening kind of under the surface. But to me, commitment is also a promise. So promise is also like a scary word for me because it seems so rigid, right? It's like you've decided you're going to do something and there's no doubt or there's no way to avoid it. You're 100% in. But
The thing
I
is
don't
with
know if I
promises-
believe that. Yeah.
The thing with promises, and this is why I said it's not a promise. It's not a promise to me. I think when you're truly committed, it goes beyond a promise. It is a change. It is a change that is now permanent within you. When you commit to something, you have said, this is who I am. You have now labeled yourself. You have changed your identity. That's what makes commitment different than promise. Promise is 98, 99%. 99.9%. Promise is everything below 100%. Commitment is that 100%. It's easy to, I mean, it's not easy, but if you really want something, you can say, oh, I promise myself to study every day for 100 days. I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm going to learn Japanese. I'm going to learn whatever every day for 100 days. Okay, great. You're on day 98, you're getting tired, or someone calls you and they say, hey, do you want to come out with us? You say, oh, I guess I could skip it one day. That one day skipping, even if it's 90 out of 100, it doesn't mean that you haven't accomplished something. It means that what you did was a promise. It's not necessarily a commitment. I think commitment should have some reverence to it. It should have the sense of, this is who I am now. Promise has a little less weight. It could still have a lot of weight. Doesn't mean that your promise isn't founded in something. It just doesn't have or carry as much weight as commitment. So, for example, I did a PhD in theoretical and computational biophysics, and I entered this almost as it had to be more than a promise. It had to be a commitment that I was going to spend thousands of hours studying a subject to develop a sense of mastery. I could have instead, spent thousands of hours playing video games, which I probably did at one point, and thousands of hours doing other very toxic things, brain rot, etc. But instead, I committed to something, and to commit to that task, I had to completely change and take a step forward that was terrifying. I moved to a new state. I moved with no financial stability. I left everyone behind, no friends, nothing. And I said, all right, I am here for this purpose. When you start looking at the underlying motivations for why you do something, that's a different story. And we can talk about that another day. This is something that I think is really important when you ask yourself, why am I committed to something? And I really think I'm going to talk about it briefly, but when you commit to something, it's because you have an underlying need or desire that you want to accomplish long-term, whether it be you want happiness, whether it be you want safety, security. You say, in my case, I might have been thinking at the time subconsciously, I want a PhD so that I can be accepted in society, so that I can find a good partner, so that I can be happy long-term with a partner and be financially stable. Maybe that's the underlying reason. But no matter what it is that you want, when you're committed to something, you have to change the labels that define you. And we don't always like labels, especially when they're given by other people towards us. But when you create your own labels, you have now given power to yourself.
Very interesting. So how would you describe some of your more recent commitments then? Because, for example, I guess this podcast is a horrible example because we've been very committed to this, but without even seeing results. But I guess, are there any examples of commitments that you did not end up pursuing, or is that not possible in your book because those would have just been broken promises?
Yeah, so I definitely have lots of broken promises. I think we all do, where we promise ourselves I mean, how many times have both you and I have tried to get ripped and jacked? You know, many times we've promised ourselves, and you go to the gym, and then you go out with friends, and then a bunch of cake is brought out, and you're like, well, one bite wouldn't hurt. And you got to find the
Not
balance.
not cake, man. It's the guava pastries. What are they called? Those things are dangerous.
Doritos? I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, I definitely broken a lot of promises where I'll say, I promise I will read every single day. I promise myself I'm going to learn how to speak German, French, and Japanese. I promise myself this. I promise myself that. Um, and those promises, you can maintain for a certain amount of time, but it's only when you commit. And when you commit to a certain extent, you have to commit financially. So recently, for this podcast, for example, I purchased a microphone. This is this goes towards the commitment, saying I am this person. And then now every time I see the microphone, I think, oh, this thing here is a reflection of who I am. I am a person that does these things. I'll purchase. My next investment is going to go towards one of my potential ventures. I'm going to commit financially to them. I remember you and I, we went to Puerto Rico, and we were at the beach, and we were just walking and talking and saying, man, wouldn't it be great if we could just connect with other travelers and just vibe with other people? Wouldn't that be fun? So we came up with this app, Viber, and we were going to treat it like Snapchat, but for traveling. And then we pitched it to our other friend, and we were all really excited about it. We wanted to make it happen. And then we had a Zoom session to see if we could make this happen. We were all very serious about it. And then we meet with our friend Parth, who at the time was working at Facebook. I'm not sure if he's still there. He's a really smart guy who hears people pitching apps all the time. And we pitched him our Viber app, and we made some slides. I mean, I made some slides. That's the extent of my commitment. We made some slides that I pitched it to him. And then he asked us, well, are any of you willing to quit your job and be fully committed to this? And we're all silent.
Silence.
And it was hilarious, but extremely embarrassing. But we all appreciated it because it really was a wake-up call. But that's an example of when, a promise, a dream is not followed through because you lack the commitment. You haven't labeled yourself as a Viber. You haven't labeled yourself as that person who defines themselves. If someone asks you, who are you? What are you? You say, oh, I'm you say your name. That's an easy commitment. Like, you've committed to your name. Sure, you can change your name, but you've basically committed to this because it's been given to you. Someone asks you, I'm a man. Sure, you've committed to that. You don't have to commit to that, but you basically committed to that. Yeah, I'm a scientist in my case. I'm a this and that. But someone who is really committed, their first answer is, for example, the shoe guy, he might say, I am a shoe entrepreneur. The guy who's on the weight loss journey, I am a fitness guru. I am this person. I am a podcaster. I am a acacia gum entrepreneur. I am whatever I am. I choose who I am. I love this quote from the Iron Giant, the animated movie, where, spoilers, the Iron Giant is obsessed is a weird word. He likes the idea of Superman. And at the very last scene of the movie, he remembers the phrase, you are who you choose to be. And this is a phrase that stuck with me for over 10 years. And I think about it every once in a while, and it pops up. And it's, you are who you choose to be because you define the labels in your life. When other people label you, if it bugs you that someone labels you something, if someone calls you stupid, if it bugs you, it's because you've let that label stick. Otherwise, you wouldn't even acknowledge it. You would laugh. I like the example of, you're the worst pig farmer I've met in my life. You laugh because it doesn't stick, just bounces off. It's funny, it's comical. But if someone says, you are the worst LinkedIn poster I've ever met in my life, if you have any sort of emotional response to it, It's because you've allowed that label to stick to you. So the promise is like a label that is stuck like a sticky note on you. That's just it's gonna fall off. A commitment is a tattoo. It's who you are now. You can't get rid of it. And if you really want to get rid of it, it's gonna be a whole journey for you to change that. A new commitment. To get rid of the commitment, you need a new commitment.
Yeah. I really like that. Commitment, like you said, should have some reverence to it. Promises are different. And once again, like you said, it's an identity that you've now decided to take on. Just like any other identity or anyone else who has even successfully done it, there will be doubts. Like my dog over here says he's a dog, but sometimes acts like a baby. But no, like, let's take Michael Jordan, right? I mean, he's probably a horrible example because everything you hear about him sounds like he's just like never, ever doubted himself. And he was always committed to being an amazing basketball player. But the idea being that commitment is something you do. It's an act, right? It's not a word. And you're making progress. It's not, you identify as this today, but it's still a journey to, I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to express something that I cannot get on paper, but it is something around how commitment has reverence to it. You feel committed. And like you said, it shapes your identity. But you're not going to be that thing necessarily on day one, But I guess you are, yeah, right? Like the second I call myself a DJ is when I become a DJ. And that is the moment where I can take control over that and start doing the things.
That's the difference between a promise and a commitment, right? When you say that I am this person, I am a DJ, I am this. Whenever you look up spiritual and affirmations things, people will say, just say that you are that thing. In my morning journal, I'll write things like, I am a brilliant scientist. I am a successful entrepreneur. I am fit. I am this. I am this. It's no longer I want to do this or I will do this. It's in the name. It's like I will do this. You're relying on willpower.
Promise. Yeah.
It's a promise. You instead have to change the label of who you are. And by changing that label, you start to embody that. I am this person. I am emotionally stable. I am someone who treats myself with kindness and compassion. I am this. I am that. When you start to believe that I am, you are now tattooing yourself, metaphorically.
I like that a lot. Yeah, same thing goes once again for DJing. Like, I think there was a lack of commitment or understanding that like, this is something I do. This is a part of me now. Just because I'm learning it and haven't mastered it does not mean that I am not a DJ. I am a DJ. And since that happened, before that, I was chasing these gigs. And since then, they just seem to just fall into my lap. So I think there's actually something really big here that when you take on this role, once again, something you can reinforce and like get better at finding this commitment, but it becomes a part of you. Two of the things it sounds like you shared, because financially committed for sure, but more importantly than that, it's skin in the game. There's a book by Nicholas Talim Nassib. I'm saying his name completely wrong. But he talks about it in so many different aspects, right? You can't trust stockbrokers who are not investing in the stocks, like putting their life savings in it. You shouldn't listen to them because they don't have any skin in the game. So skin in the game is very important in driving that commitment. So like you said, buying the DJ controller, spending countless hours on that passion project, that is when you decide that this is now a part of me. And I think to your point, there's a lot of different blocks that stop us from committing. For me, it is those doubts that creep up. So let's take the more complex one, product management. Something that I find happening in my head anytime I say I want to be a product manager is, oh, I didn't go to a great school. I didn't work these kinds of jobs. I'm not technical or technically inclined, so I can't do this. That kind of goes against everything that we started with, which is expand the time horizon. So in 40 years, I could do all of this. And then two, to what you were talking about, is the why factor. Do I really want this? I think some of that is ingrained in my head, that like from society, from my parents, that, oh, you need to like do the top job, like go find the coolest, smartest thing you could do. And maybe that's really not what I want. If I did, then I would identify with it. I would say I am a product manager, because I can look back in my life and find many places where I technically was a product manager. But it's just about, like you said, committing and deciding that that's who you are. It's part of your identity.
So I want to leave us with a question. I think this is a good point to ask a question. And I want to do something a little different today. I want us to ask each other the same question. So I'm going to ask it to you, and then I want you to ask it to me, and then we're going to ask the audience. So, what else can you do to fully commit to your dreams?
What else, as in from what we're already doing or what we already talked about?
Yes. Well, literally, what else can you do? So pick a dream. What else can you do to really solidify that label in yourself?
I think one that's been on my mind a lot is content creation, and particularly getting good on video. So I think I am going to sign myself up. No, I am a content creator, and I am posting a weekly video, whatever that is. That sounds like a half-assed commitment. um,
No, I thought it was good. I think that you're brainstorming it, but I like your idea. But yeah, what else can you do? So I'll let you finish.
yeah. What else can I do? Yeah, I'm obviously already doing a bunch of things. Now I'm creating the content. Now I need to find ways to publish and distribute and promote it. So to that end, I am going to create a weekly video where I get myself on camera, get very comfortable with it. Doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to happen. So that's mine. What else are you going to do to solidify your commitment?
So I also am a content creator, and to solidify my commitment to really embody that label that I want to place on myself, I'm going to buy a microphone stand, a microphone arm, I should say, where I can readily move it around and put it up close if I want to make a key statement, a key point. And I'm going to buy a better camera, and I'm going to do all these things. But I want to really emphasize that when you say I'm gonna, it's a subtle way of transforming it into a promise. And as I said it, I realized that commitment is not about the future. Commitment is about the now. Promise is about the future. The future can vary, but the now is now. So I want to financially invest in these avenues. So I'm going to dedicate, so I am dedicating a certain percentage that I'm going to work out later today of my paycheck towards this venture. Whether that be for my own editing software or to hire someone to edit, I am now committing, just like you would for retirement. And you mentioned these people who have no skin in the game that play with your retirement funds. Reminds me of that. But I'm committed to saving a certain amount of money towards my goal. And with that, I think this is a good exercise for us to do every once in a while. Ask ourselves, what else can I do to commit to my dreams? And why do I want this in the first place? So I want to ask you, the audience, what else can you do to commit to your dreams?
And we want a weekly progress check-in. So drop it in the comments, wherever else. Of course, then we are also accountable to this, so that will be fun. But the fun part is, at least with both of ours, actually, as the audience, you will see how committed we are, because both of those can be found on the internet. So let's see how this works, and it's a social experiment. So with that, as always, a pleasure, Andres, and let's get this stuff published so I can meet
What's
my
your next-
commitment.
What's your next best thought?
What's your next best thought?